So I'm Niki Smit. I'm a game designer. I'm also co-founder of Monobanda-play, which is an art collective in the Netherlands. And I make interactive art. It's kind of hard to describe, but we'll get into that.
Lovely. Just a note on the background noise. We're in Shanghai, and there's a big skyscraper being constructed there and there.
Two of them, yeah.
And basically all around. What brings you to this neck of the woods?
Deep, together with my colleague Owen Harris, I'm making a meditative virtual reality game that you control by deep belly breathing. And we're here at a Buddhism and Technology conference, so that's all about meditation. So I guess they just saw us online somewhere, and suddenly we're here on the other side of the world talking about our passion project.
So how long have you been working on Deep?
I think 2.5 years. And that's just me. Owen is my partner Owen is the original sort of a spiritual father of the project, and he's been working on it even longer.
I haven't yet had a chance to play it, but my understanding is that it has a strain gauge that helps to actually measure, because we don't have anything. There's not a consumer mainstream piece of hardware that does that. What would you say is... Actually, I want to restart that question myself. What do we want to talk about? Do we want to talk about the hardware? Is that really the thing we want to talk about? All right, let's go down that road. Okay. I loved Deep immediately because it uses breath as a controller, and I've seen a couple of other approaches where people are using the microphone to detect the breath. I wish we had better hardware pieces. What was it that drove you guys to make your own?
I think just a need for it, because it wasn't there. So Owen got introduced to deep belly breathing. And virtual reality this is my strong belief, a body medium. So if you're working in VR, then make VR controllable with your body, not with a joystick and your thumbs.
Yeah,
you're in there with your whole body, so do something with it. So, yeah, I think that's just the start of that philosophy of just grabbing the rest of the human body that you feel is in the game already and just making it part of the whole experience. So.
I feel like I couldn't have scripted you to say something that I agreed with more. What other sensors do you think should be present?
In Deep or general?
No, in general.
World?
Just like what would your dream mainstream hardware setup look like?
Oh, that's a really difficult question for me, because actually I am very sort of not a technology guy. And also I don't believe in starting projects from a technology standpoint, because then you get this sort of pigeonholed view. You should look at humans, or at a human problem at least, and find technology that fits that. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that, because I think it's about humans.
Yeah, I think that we have such a tunnel vision on. You know, we sit at desks in swivel chairs and we use keyboards and we click with mouse and then we swipe with this, and that solves certain sorts of problems really well, but it leaves a whole other class of things being completely impossible. I mean, some of the things that you've done, I loved the sand project that had the projection mapping on that. That's nothing that any of those interfaces would have ever been able to make happen. Can you just tell us about that project? I loved it so much.
Yeah, I think you're talking about Mimicry. Mimicry is a very old project. We made it in 2011. I think it's deceptively simple, but also technical. It's just we have a real sandbox with real sand, and we hang a light projector above it, and a Microsoft Kinect. And a Microsoft Kinect can detect height. Right. So it can immediately see how high the sand is where. So we can then very easily say like, hey, you're making a mountain out of sand, we will project snow on top of the mountain. And if you make like a hole in the sand, we can put water in that hole. At that point we were I think one of the first ones that did it. There's a lot of those installations now. But for us what was really important is also make that translation to the virtual world. So in that same world that you're sculpting, you can also roll around in it, play in it. So there's this sort of very physical connection between the virtual world and the physical world. And you have players that hold a controller and that are controlling a game character in that virtual landscape. But at the same time you see the little players not only rolling around on the screen, but also in the sandbox itself, which is also a sort of physical screen. And what you get is that people start playing together. So we didn't put any rules in that game because we were a firm believer in sort of that if you create playful situations, people will start being creative themselves. And that's always what we want to do. We want to create situations where people reconnect with sort of their playful self. And that's what we saw. We saw in Russia, some kids came up with something that we never thought of as game designers. They flattened all the sand, and the people in the sand would write their name. And without showing the sand to the people in the game people would have to sort of jump really high. So they would be high enough to look at the sand and scream out the name of the players in the sand. Oh, you wrote this name! And of course we anticipated them making race tracks and whatever, but that was a new one, and that made us really proud to see like, yes, here we go, emergent play. This is not something we scripted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love things like that. One of the strangest games I ever played was, I don't know if this is a thing that anybody's ever done, or if my friend just like sat 3 rocks in front of me, and there was 3 of us sitting down, and we had, no, it was just 1 rock in the center. And he said, it's a game, go. And we're like, what are the rules? And he says, there are no rules. And the game became this meta game about pushing the rules into different, and it was actually super clear when somebody had won.
Wow.
And it was one of the most hilarious and bizarre things I've ever done.
The magic circle.
Yeah, it was just fun. I love that you think about this in terms of creating environments for people. I don't know if that's how you think of it.
Yeah, I come partly from I'm not an actor or something, but that's just rude. Shall we just wait for? Shall you do that question again?
I think. Pardon me. We're shooting a.
Can we we're shooting a video here. Yeah. Let's try it again and we'll see where we go. So, you had a question about
playful environments, making environments that encourage play.
Yeah. So just ask that question again, like.
Okay. Let me. I think it was that I love that you create environments that encourage play, and I was wondering if that's how you think about what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the starting points. I sort of grew up in a theater environment. I was schooled not only in game design but also on the theater faculty of my school. So at the one point I was taught game design, and at another point I was taught theater design. And creating sort of this active theatrical environment where you can step into something and suddenly there's the theater rules, like now you're in this story, now you have this role, now we move in this way, is something that deeply inspired me to make that sort of transformative environment, but attach game design rules to it. And I love creating that sort of settings in an open environment that other sort of people in a public environment can join in. Because what you see, and that's one of the most cool and gratifying things as a game designer, is that people switch their behavior. they're normal people walking around in a public space, and then they enter one of our physical installations, one of our playful spaces. And first they try out a little, they're a little afraid, but at a certain point you see them switch, and then they're playful and they understand each other and they understand the other players and they come up with new things. And that's interesting. And it's also a very important thing to see, because if it's that easy to change the behavior of people, then there's a lot of power there, a lot of untapped potential for mental health care, psychology, all education, all these kind of things. And it's not to say that I want to solve all those things, but I'd love to work together with the professionals that do, so that the stuff that I'm making gets grounded into sort of concrete reality again. So yeah, I think that's why I love making these sort of environments.
One of the things that you use in the masks, I want to talk about that, but you use this anonymity and sort of giving people space to interact in a different way. Can you just describe what that project is?
Yeah, so Third and later the children's version Samsara is a deceptively simple concept where we make helmets, just hollow helmets without eyes in them.
They're really beautiful, sort of origami, giant. Like they're not just helmets; they're very large.
Yeah. They also need to be sort of almost sculptures.
Yeah.
And they don't have eyes in them, but you're invited to put them on. So you put them on, and you're essentially blind. But you're not blind because there is a phone in there, just in front of your eyes. So you have a screen. And on that screen, you see yourself live from a distance, because we attached a webcam on the wall, and that is streaming live images of you standing in that space to yourself. So suddenly your eyes are not in your head anymore, they are outside of your body on the wall. And two things happen. The first thing that happens is people need to get reacquainted with their own body, because it's scary to walk forward when you're blind, but you can see a tiny version of yourself standing there, and you see that the floor before you is empty, but it's still scary. So there's this tension field there, and people they start out acting very slowly and unsure of themselves before relearning their own body and getting quicker. So that's almost a game. Like, hey, there's the game character in front of me, even though it's real life and it's me, and I have to get to know it again. So that's the first thing that happens. And the second thing that happens is more of a conceptual thing, and it's a thing I'm really interested in, is it breaks or at least subverts normal social rules. So people put the helmets on, and then suddenly there's this sort of anonymity because nobody can see their face. And also there's this sort of sense of being a performer, because you see yourself standing there. You're no longer in your own body, you see yourself. You're audience for yourself. So you see people, after a little while, you see people taking on these power poses, becoming really big, or they start touching other people, which is very interesting to see, because it's actually normally very rude to touch somebody that you don't know. And we show this piece in musea and stuff, so that's a pretty formal state.
Yeah, museums are places where you just don't go up and touch strangers and poke them.
Yeah, and once they're in Third or Samsara, they do. So that's interesting. And there's almost that sort of sensuality that comes with it it is pretty sensual. Like, we can try it right now if we close our eyes and we touch let our fingers find each other.
It's just, I immediately start giggling as well.
But there's something going on there. Like, it's almost flirty. It's like, and it's so personal, and still people do it. So apparently it's that easy to break down those walls of shame within the right context. And we do it for an artistic project.
Yeah.
But we also learned something very important about we have an interesting case study about human nature. So.
Because you didn't give them any prompting whatsoever about what they should do in
Never,
this space.
with none of my projects.
Right.
It's go in. There's one of the dogmas that we have at Monobanda is no text ever, and we hardly ever break it. But we never explain things with text. We never did, and hopefully never will.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because it's play.
That's actually great news because in VR. Nobody reads anything.
No.
So,
Nor should
they. And every time I see an interface with a scroll bar in VR,
yeah, but that's
you just missed it.
A person that missed that put that in is a technology-driven web designer that is not accustomed to the fact yet that this is a totally new medium.
Yeah.
It is not just your computer screen, but then you can look around.
Yeah, no,
it's
not at all.
Something totally else.
Yeah. It's not film with no borders. It's not games that you can walk around in.
It's the horseless carriage syndrome again.
Yes.
So it's the same with when we just got TV. It was like, oh my God, we have TV. What are we gonna do with it? But
they televised radio broadcast is basically what they did, and vaudeville
and theater, because that was there. So we just do theater on television now. And it took a really long time for television to evolve and become this really rich medium that has education, slice of life, news, documentaries, animation, moving pictures, all that stuff on there. So hopefully we will discover that VR also is its totally own thing. And it's not just a new interface for gaming or movies, but it is...
Yeah.
And that's interesting.
Yes,
because, there's so much to gain.
Yeah. Are there any provocations that you would want to issue to other VR creators to sort of just like poke them about, here's an edge, like here's a juicy part?
Yeah, well, treat it as a body medium. So what I'm doing at Monobanda right now is we're trying to make projects that address the fact that your whole body is in there. So we have all these sort of interactions, like we let something get really close, really slow, trying to get to the point where you can also almost feel the pressure of something that isn't really there.
Yeah. Are you doing that with sound? Like, are you
also? So we have a game called Remembering that we made together with Sonic Picnic and Lizzie Wonders, and that starts out very mellow and poetic and abstract, but at the end of it, we're ramping up sort of the tension, and we play with that physicality. So at a certain point, objects will come very close to you, and you will hear them coming past your ear. And at a certain point, we ram something right through you, and we do that with such a sudden sound also that you see people curl up.
Yeah.
You see an automatic body reflex of curling up, and they're grasping for the place on their body.
I find it really uncomfortable when visualizations. Sometimes I've tried out different meditation apps, and they're trying to be calming, presumably, because they're a meditation app. And the things that are coming so close to me are just amping up my just animal sense of self and safety. That whole, I think it's the hug range.
It's
if you're going to violate that, you need to be doing it purposefully. You need to have a purpose for violating that, and you need to honor people's brain safety.
Which is again also a theater rule, In theater you can also break that by going within that space, and then even the audience will feel it like, oh, shit is getting real, So you need to be, if you're working in VR, you need to be conscious of that you're working with human bodies and human body language. And if you incorporate that in your design in a more informed way than just, hey, you can wave your hand because it's a sword, then we're getting somewhere.
We don't just have to make lightsaber experiences. It turns out there's a whole...
Well, it's awesome that they're there. And
it's awesome that
they're
there.
It's a very logical place to start.
Absolutely.
And now let's continue that journey.
Yes. Yeah. I think that you already mentioned the controllers and triggers and whatnot, and we're going to put those down also. I'm really looking forward to treating the whole body as an interaction surface and being able to...
And that technology is already there.
It's coming really quickly.
No, it's there, and it's gathering dust in our game entertainment closet. It is the Microsoft Kinect.
Yeah.
We have the whole world to play with.
I'm so confused why the Kinect technology isn't more referenced or incorporated into the stuff that's already shipped.
Well, the interesting thing is, it's no longer shipped with the console, which kind of reinforces that image of it failed as a commercial product. But at the same time,
it enabled completely different kind of games.
And not only games, because the advent of the Kinect nurtured a totally new art installation scene of people making public art, artistic installation stuff for in musea. All those creative minds that had all these high-tech ideas that they could never make, could suddenly make them.
Yeah.
Because some weird game company decided, we needed to follow Nintendo and go into the real world. We needed to go in real space.
Yeah.
And in that sense, also, mad props for Nintendo for being the first one to for being a big commercial company and taking that blue ocean step into, you know what? We need to incorporate the human body, social space.
Right.
And then Microsoft followed with the Kinect, and Sony followed with their PlayStation Eye. But they only followed because Nintendo had success with that. And maybe these things are gone away again in sort of the entertainment game sector, but they're here to stay in sort of our public discourse about the impact of interaction. People in psychology are using them, people in research are using them.
Wow,
so
that's fascinating.
Yeah, so that's really cool. And in that way, technology does really inform the narrative and drives the narrative forward and drives research forward.
Yeah, and my hope is that there will be enough boundary-pushing VR projects that incorporate more of the body, that incorporate things like EEG sensors and do really cool stuff, so that there is evidence for whoever is making choices about what features to ship in the next HMD, that they would go, oh, okay, we know that there's a little pod of super interesting stuff that that feels brand new and feels like the future.
Yeah. And also that there's enough for other professionals that have nothing to do with gaming to just think,
to get pulled in.
What are those crazy tech geeks doing there? Oh my God, that could be so interesting for this and this psychology study. Let's get on board with them, because that's what happened with Deep.
Yeah.
We are now working together with the Radboud University to make our meditation game a safe environment for children with anxiety attacks, and teach them this very valuable lesson of deep belly breathing to regulate their anxiety levels. But we would never have had the knowledge to do that ourselves in a meaningful way.
I think that's a great point about pulling in other professions. I feel like virtual reality and AR touched so many possible things in the same way that the internet touched everything.
But in all fields, we see this converging of art, education, and science. Especially art and science are coming together faster and faster. They were opposites, but now artists are working together with researchers.
I don't think they were opposites, though. There's so many. If you look at the number of scientists who were artists in the general population of scientists, they were just as likely as the general population to be an artist and have some sort of creative outlet. However, if you look at the Nobel Prize winning scientists, they are incredibly highly likely to have some sort of real serious artistic or creative endeavor.
Also a musician or
they all had some real creative practice. Einstein attributed his most important breakthroughs to moments when he was playing the violin.
Wow.
And I think it's incredibly pernicious myth in our culture that somehow art and science aren't complementary, because they
Yeah.
are. So, I mean, music has so many mathematical, beautiful pieces of the way that math and music run together. Anyway, I'm on a rant.
In a bigger sphere, they're sort of the same as what happens in every creative process. That sometimes you have to brainstorm really freely, but sometimes you have to look it down and lock it down and say, like, look, this works. I'm going to scratch this. I'm going to move forward with this. So there's this really formal part to a creative process and this free part, and that's exactly what those two sides of the coin are.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so last question. Is there any question that I should have asked you but I didn't?
Wow, that's a confronting one. No, because then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because then you're going to ask that question and then it's me leading the conversation. Okay, let's...
this is so in opposition to your rules of not having rules.
Yeah. A few panelists these past 2 days got asked the question, what's your dream project to work on? And I didn't get to answer that on stage.
Oh,
so.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay. So my absolute dream project is something I already made a prototype of. People seem to react pretty well to it, but then it sort of never went anywhere, and it's called Bohm, and it's a meditative game about growing a tree. So years before Deep, I was already making sort of, I called it Zen gaming back then, but it's sort of almost an antithesis to normal gaming expectations,
right.
Where you are growing a tree. You are the tree. And every branch you can sculpt the way you want, but it goes very slowly. And I still wait for that game to happen. Like, I want to come home drunk or tired and play something like that to relax, because I need to. Like, my life is so stressful, and I think the lives of most people are really stressful, and everybody has their own escapism to deal with that. Some people watch stupid shows, some people binge watch Breaking Bad. I play video games.
Yeah.
But the choice of video games that walk this very fragile line between automatic enough to relax, but engaging enough to not be boring, is very small for me.
Yep.
What works for me for years as almost meditative practice is grinding in RPGs. So that is just in those games that have a lot of levels and numbers, that you just keep killing the same enemies over and over again to buy the weapon you really want or to get a little bit stronger. And it's actually very boring to do, but there's this nicely lined, sharply defined thing I'm working towards. And then I can just do the same thing over and over again and relax with that. But that's only an approximation of a solution that should already have been here long ago. Like, where are meditation games as a legitimate, or relaxation games as a legitimate genre in games? Why are they not here yet? The same goes for documentary games. So yeah,
Lovely.
That was a tangent, but
they're all tangents.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for chatting with me.
Yeah, thanks for the interesting questions.
Yeah, you're more than welcome.
Everything's okay, I'm just trying to act my age. Everything's okay, I'm just trying